Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 12. The Paladin of the Holy Kingdom. Orin glanced around, and after verifying the identity of the man approaching them, a smile appeared on his face, like that of a carnivore about to pounce its prey. That man seemed quite slender in comparison to Orin's brawny form. However, his was not the scrawniness of a twig. Rather, he had a wiry, steely look about him. If one forged and reforged a man, burning away everything unrelated to his intended function, it would produce a textbook slimness of the kind he embodied. In addition, his narrow eyes were keen, as though he was about to attack at any moment. Then there were his narrow pupils, which did not look like they belonged to anyone engaged in a legitimate enterprise. In polite terms, he was an assassin. In less than polite terms, he was a mass murderer. Speak of the devil, and here he comes. Fancy meeting you here, Night Shift-san. Nice to see you. The other man made no sound as he approached them with silent footsteps. He was dressed very differently from Orin. Orin and the men around him wore suits of heavy leather armor made from the hides of magical beasts, called Linka cattle. In addition, they carried small round shields and single-edged swords, the standard outfit of the Holy Kingdom's superior troops. Incidentally, Orin was the only one who had 8 of those swords at his waist. In contrast to that, the other man wore a suit of enchanted light leather armor. There was an owl crest stitched on his right chest, while the emblem of the Holy Kingdom adorned his left. Orin, I haven't received your shift report yet. Also, is it the attitude you ought to be taking with it, superior? That's practically insubordination. How many times do I have to remind you of that? Well, do forgive me, Platoon Sergeant Dono. As Orin saluted him sloppily, the men under him saluted as well. It was a proper salute, the kind which they would never give a nobleman or any mere superior officer. It was a salute which showed genuine respect. The man sighed with a ha. It was a sigh made by one who knew that his conduct was unacceptable, but who also knew that lecturing him about it would be pointless. Sorry, boss. Old habits die hard, as they say. The reason why Orin saluted this man, however reluctantly, was because he had defeated Orin. I'd like to beat you once before I leave this place. On your terms. Don't you think, Platoon Sergeant Pavel Baraja? The man, Pavel Baraja, was nicknamed the Night Watchman. Like Orin, he was one of the 9 colors. The massive, exquisitely made bow on his back gleamed with the faint light of magic, and the quiver, hanging at his waist, glowed in the same way. He was an archer, just as his appearance suggested. He was a superb marksman, with a reputation of perfect accuracy. I think this all the time, but working at night sure is hard. The Demihumans do just fine in the darkness, but it's hard enough just to find their traces, let alone fight them. That's why we're here. The only way to gain magic and talents comparable to Demihumans, their vision, aside, is through training. And we've received that training. Yes. Same goes for that daughter you're so proud of, right? Pavel's face twitched and Orin instantly regretted his poor choice of words. This was a man whose expression remained unchanged even in the midst of a drinking party. The only exception was when the topic of his daughter and wife came up. That was where the problem lay. Oh yes. She's an outstanding girl. It was happening. It had already begun. Pavel paid no heed to Orin's regret and continued speaking. That said, I honestly have no idea why she wants to become a paladin. She's a weak little girl, certainly, not the type who thinks of fighting power as everything. Honestly, she's even been scared to tears by caterpillars in the past. And while I did say that might was everything just now, that doesn't extend to my wife, although my wife does seem like that in some ways, and she's adorable because she grew up like me. No, I should say that it's a pity she ended up growing up to look like me, but the true shame is that she doesn't have any talent for using swords. However, she's adept with the bow. If only she could hone her skills in that respect, but then here she is wanting to be a paladin and whatnot. He let the meandering monologue flow in one ear and out the other, making the appropriate noises in response when they were needed, but it would seem he had still been found out. Oi, are you listening to me? That question was only to be expected. No, I wasn't listening. I think I stopped after the 3rd time. After hearing the same thing about 5 or 6 times, under normal circumstances Orin would have unhappily retorted, hell no. However, taking that tone with Pavel would be a terrible mistake. That was because he knew that he would surely reply, then I'll tell you again. This was the right answer. Of course I did. What a lovely girl she is. Pavel's face changed dramatically. Well, it was an ugly, fiendish expression that put Orin on his guard. The fact was that the other man was simply embarrassed. If he did not capitalize on the way Pavel's mind was savoring the joy of hearing his daughter being praised by others, and overcome Pavel's desire to praise his daughter, he would be plunged into that hell once more. Also, only one thing could trump the topic of his daughter. That was work. Doesn't night work mess with your biological clock? Wouldn't your body get weird? The butcher's expression on Pavel's face returned to his usual killer's expression. How many times have you asked that question already? The answer's the same as always, it's nothing to be concerned about. Still, why do you keep asking that question? What are you really getting at? He knew the cause for it, but he still stared at his rapid shift in attitude. Where did you go just now? He wanted to say, but Ulrin did not want that hell to return once more. Ha. What I really want to say? Well, that's a surprising question. I was just thinking that it'd cause a lot of trouble for me if the man who beat me ruined his body and ended up having to retire over a trivial thing. Of course, once I win, such minor things won't matter anymore. In the past, Ulrin had been full of himself when he was first assigned to this strong point, and thinking back to those days embarrassed him. Skilled soldiers gathered around him in admiration, fueling his ego ever further, and somehow, he had ended up fighting a mock battle with Pavel. Ulrin favored the sword, close combat. In contrast, Pavel favored the bow, range combat. If the two of them clashed, the question of engagement range would be extremely important. However, Pavel declared that he was fine with close combat. And then, Ulrin lost. Ulrin respected Pavel for that reason. At the same time, he harbored the desire to beat him next time. This time, he would fight Pavel in his field of expertise, range combat, and emerge the victor there. Is that so? You want to fight me, then? Well, I'm at peak physical condition, with no handicaps on my part. A bestial smile crossed Pavel's face as he said so, and it made Ulrin's chest heat up. Oh yes, definitely. Isn't that obvious? I want to fight you. I want to put my life on the line against you. However, that won't be allowed, will it? Even so, if possible, I'd like us to have a battle where both of us could die at any moment. That's how I want to fight you. However, Ulrin remained silent. That was because his instinct said there was no telling where the beast, before his eyes, would go. And in fact, what Pavel said after that confirmed those instincts. Still, I have to apologize. You should know why too. There's very few people who can beat you as you are, now in melee combat, and I'm not one of them. Then let's settle it with ranged combat. Those words did not issue from Ulrin's mouth. That was because he knew it would only be an insult to a worthy opponent. He recalled Pavel's bow skills. He was still not confident that he could evade his attacks and close the distance at the same time. No, not yet. Well, if that's all, time to make your report. No need to rush, boss. It's not time for the shift change yet, right? Look, the bell hasn't rung yet. Indeed, the chime that signaled the shift change had not yet sounded. You still need to prepare to change shifts, right? There's things to do before the bell goes. You ought to be getting yourself ready so you can change over the moment the bell rings. It's still too early even for that, right, boss? Come talk with us for a bit. Then, may I make a report to the platoon sergeant second in command? The person who spoke was one of his men. Oh, that's a great idea. Excellent job, you. How about that, boss? Ha. You're being really persistent today. You want to say something, right? Good grief, if you want to say something, come out and say it. But of course, he could not. Well, he had acknowledged the other man as someone he could talk with because he respected him. Ulrin was the type who did not speak to people, precisely because he respected them. That was because he wanted to be seen as a man who could stand on his own. Well, that's why you're the boss. You get it, don't you? Ha. So, what is it? I won't let you off lightly if it's some trivial nonsense. Well, about that. Ulrin took off his helmet and scratched his head. The cool air felt strangely comfortable on his heated scalp. The truth is I want to go on a warrior's pilgrimage. So can I leave this place? He could hear the gasps of surprise from all around him. However, the expression on the slender man in front of him remained unmoved. Why tell me? That's because you're the man I respect the most in this nation, boss. If you won't stop me either, then I won't have any more doubts. Aren't you an NCO? If you finished your conscription period, I can't possibly stop you. The Holy Kingdom practiced conscription. Therefore, they sometimes call those people who chose to be career soldiers non-commissioned officers, in order to differentiate them from those people who had been conscripted. Pavel and all his men were NCOs, while Ulrin had some NCOs and conscripts under his command. In that case, you don't mind if I quit, right? Being asked that question marked the first time Pavel's face had changed apart from when the topic of his wife and daughter had come up. Ulrin had barely managed to discover it by dint of his extraordinary powers of perception gained from being a warrior. Nobody else around them had noticed it. He was someone that Ulrin acknowledged as a man of steel, but he was actually perturbed by the question of his staying or departure. His heart swirled with a mix of delight and sorrow. Well, legally speaking, I have to accept that. I can't stop you. That said, we'll sorely feel the absence of a strong man like you. You should have gone on your warrior's journey earlier, right? Why now? Is it because there aren't any more demi-human attacks? Since that time half a year ago, the demihumans had stopped attacking this fortress. In the past, they had attacked about once or twice a month, in groups of about a few dozen each time. While they only numbered a few dozen, there were still demihumans who had superior physical abilities compared to mankind, and many of them possessed special abilities on top of that. Those were numbers which could easily slaughter an entire outpost wholesale. Both Overlord and Pavel had experienced many situations where they had to send out elite troops for relief operations. You know I don't enjoy slaughtering the demihumans, right? I like fighting strong people and becoming strong. So how about the Grand King, then? Ah, that guy. Oh, and then there's the Demon Claw, the Beast Emperor, the Shen King, the Ice Flame Lightning, and the Spiral Lance. Pavel had mentioned the nicknames of several notable demihumans, but none of them moved Ulrin's heart apart from the one he had first mentioned.